My dear children, come closer, sit by the warmth of the evening fire. Tonight, I want to tell you a story from a time long before your screens, your busy schedules, and your noisy world. A story from the days when hearts listened more than mouths spoke. A story about a traveler, an old storyteller who came to our village only once a year, and yet managed to change the destinies of everyone who heard him. I remember I was just a young boy, no older than you are today. Our village lay between two rivers, surrounded by tall whispering trees and fields that glowed golden during harvest season. Life was simple, perhaps too simple. People loved each other, yes, but they also carried burdens they never shared. A farmer would hide his tears behind his smile. A mother would work all day but never speak of her exhaustion. A young man would dream of leaving but would never dare to say it out loud. Feelings stayed locked inside, and silence, my children, is a heavy thing. It grows like a shadow behind you. But then every year, on the same evening, the silence lifted. Because that was the day he arrived. The traveling storyteller. No one knew his real name. No one knew where he came from. Some said he lived on the mountains beyond the clouds. Others whispered he was older than any of us could imagine. A few children even believed he was a spirit sent by the heavens. All we knew was that he walked into our village with a wooden staff, a bag of books, and eyes that carried more stories than his tongue ever spoke. He would appear right as the sun dipped behind the hills, the sky painted orange and lilac, and the air carrying the scent of wet soil. As soon as he stepped onto the dusty road, children raced to him, grabbing his hands, tugging at his clothes, begging, "Storyteller, tell us a story, tell us a new one." And he would just smile, slow, gentle, warm, like he'd been waiting all year just to hear those words. That evening, every family gathered in the big open field near the banyan tree. Lamps flickered like fireflies. Mothers brought sweet bread and warm milk. Fathers sat with their tools resting beside them. Birds quieted, as if nature itself wanted to hear him. When he finally stood under the banyan tree, he tapped his staff twice on the ground, a sound that echoed like a heartbeat. And then silence, deep, expectant silence. He closed his eyes and said, "Tonight, I bring you a story that will find the one whose heart needs it most." We didn't understand what he meant, not then, but we soon would. He began telling the tale of a young boy named Rowan, who wanted nothing more than to be strong. Rowan believed that strength came from lifting heavy things and fighting battles. But in the story, Rowan learned that real strength came from holding on when life felt impossible, and from letting go when the heart was tired. As the storyteller spoke, I saw our village blacksmith, big, muscular, fearless, wipe a tear from the corner of his eye. That was the first miracle. The storyteller didn't just tell stories. His words opened people. They reached the places inside us we didn't even know needed healing. One year, he told the story of a widow who discovered joy again. The next year, a story of two brothers who forgave each other. Another year, he shared the tale of a bird who learned to sing after losing its wings. Every time, someone in the village would change. A mother estranged from her daughter suddenly embraced her. A man who wanted to abandon his farm found the courage to rebuild it. A young girl who felt worthless discovered her voice and began teaching younger children. But the year I will never forget, the year the storyteller changed everything for me, came when he arrived, looking older, slower, and quieter than ever. His steps were heavy. His smile, though gentle, carried a sadness I hadn't seen before. That night, he didn't begin with his usual greeting. Instead, he said, "Tonight's story is my last one." A shock went through the crowd. Mothers gasped. Children cried out, "No, you can't go." Even the elders exchanged anxious glances. But he only shook his head. "I am just a traveler," he whispered, "and every traveler has a final destination." He motioned for everyone to sit, and the village fell into the deepest silence I've ever known. He began to tell the story of a carpenter who spent his whole life building houses for others. He built homes where families laughed, where newborns took their first breaths, where old couples held hands through stormy nights, But the carpenter himself never stopped to rest. He ignored his own needs, his own tired bones. He kept working, giving, building. Until one day, his body grew too weak, and he realized he had never built something for himself. Not a home, the storyteller said softly. Not a dream, not even a moment. And then he looked directly at me. His eyes locked with mine, those deep, old, knowing eyes. "Young man," he said, "do you know what the carpenter forgot?" I was stunned. No storyteller had ever spoken to someone in the middle of a tale. My heart raced. My hands trembled. I shook my head. "He forgot the simplest truth," the storyteller said, "that a life spent giving must also receive, that hearts need rest, that dreams need space to grow." I felt something warm and strange inside me. At that moment, I realized he wasn't telling a story anymore. He was speaking to me who always helped others, but never shared how lonely I felt. Me who pretended to be strong even when I was breaking. The story went on, each word carving itself deep into my heart, and when he finished, the entire field was silent again. No one moved. Not even the wind dared to break the moment. The storyteller slowly stood, leaned on his staff, and said, "My time with you is ending, but my stories will live as long as you tell them to someone who needs them." Someone whispered, "Where will you go now?" He smiled a sad, peaceful smile. "Where all stories go, into the hearts of those who listen." The village children rushed to him, clinging to his clothes, but he gently placed his hands on their heads and blessed them. I watched him walk away under the silver moonlight, his figure growing smaller until he disappeared behind the trees, and that was the last time any of us ever saw him. But his stories, my children, his stories never left. Because something remarkable happened after that night. A quiet transformation swept through the village. People talked more, laughed more, cried openly, forgave easily. Someone built a community bench where villagers sat and shared their troubles. Another started teaching children storytelling so no one would forget the old tales. As for me, I became the one who told stories. At first, just to younger children, then to their families, and eventually to everyone who would gather under the banyan tree, the same way we once gathered for him. And now, my children, I sit before you not because I am wiser or older, but because someone once told me that stories belong to those who listen with their hearts. The traveling storyteller changed our village, not by magic, not by miracles, but by reminding us of something we had forgotten, that stories heal, stories unite, stories save, stories transform, and sometimes the right story, told at the right moment, can change a destiny. So tonight, as you sit here listening to me, remember this. One day, someone will need a story from you. Someone will need your comfort, your wisdom, your voice. And when that day comes, do not hesitate. Share what you know. Pass it forward. Because the storyteller may be gone, but the world still needs his magic. And that magic now lives in you.